I want to give you a clear distinction between true versus false self-esteem. And I want you to use a lot of these ideas that I'm going to be sharing with you to actually really increase your self-esteem so that you can feel absolutely phenomenal about who you are. So false self-esteem is the typical way that we conceive of self-esteem, especially in the West, of like, I need to achieve more things and do more things, and I have more things and get bigger muscles. See, it's based off of external phenomena that is going to be in our life and then pass away. Because the external world is full of things that just arise and pass. They come and go. There's nothing to really grasp onto that is going to give us the sense of lasting connection to ourselves, the present, the sense of lasting security, peace, stability, fulfillment, etc. Because the external world, you can't actually control it. The world is just this free flow of energy. Things come, they pass away. It's impermanent. So grasping on to a particular thing in order to fix the internal problem is going to very fundamentally fail because it's incapable of doing that. False self-esteem is always stuck trying to grasp onto something in order to feel secure about oneself. What really is self-esteem? So let's get clear about what self-esteem really is. And if I can just kind of boil it down for simplicity's sake, self-esteem is simply feeling safe, secure, and grounded and present within the present moment and oneself. It's being harmonious within one's own being. False self-esteem tries to mimic true self-esteem. False self-esteem tries to configure and manipulate the external world in such a way so that the internal world can feel harmonious. Right? And very obviously, this doesn't work. So true self-esteem is based off of inner psychological, emotional, and spiritual factors. It's based off of this connection to existence and to yourself. It's based off of this harmonious way of relating to the full spectrum that makes up who you are, all the various parts of you, all the emotions, all the psychological phenomena. False self-esteem is simply based off of external factors, which we'll go into a bit more detail as this video progresses. So true self-esteem is stable. Right? True self-esteem doesn't like go anywhere, right? It can be, at some times it can waver a little bit. It can, it's not going to be this completely steady line. But it's not going to be unstable like false self-esteem. Because true self-esteem is when you build a psychology within yourself that is capable of providing its own self with the security that it needs. Not by clinging on to something in the external world, but by connecting to the very existence of what's happening right now and to yourself and being able to surrender to it and open to it. True self-esteem occurs when you're able to surrender and open to actual existence. You feel safe enough to be, open to life. So false self-esteem is weak, it's fickle. It goes up and down when external situations, change. So when external situations align in the way that you want them to align, you feel good about yourself. And then when they don't align in a way that you want them to align, then you don't feel good about yourself. It's as simple as that. And then when you don't feel good about yourself, you want to manipulate the external situations so you can feel good about who you are. You want to get that person back. You want to get that money. You want to get that achievement. You got to stack up your trophies, whatever. You got to get bigger muscles. There's always something wrong. There's something to fix. There's something more to do. There's something greater that I have to be, other than just existing right now. Right? So it's like we're trying to mimic the sense of inner security and stability that comes with psychological, emotional, spiritual development, and it never works. So true self-esteem accepts oneself, whereas false self-esteem judges and evaluates oneself. There's a part of you right now that's already accepting of the present experience. It's just your awareness. Your awareness just watches and observes. It doesn't reject the feeling. It doesn't try to avoid a feeling. It doesn't say this part of you is bad, this part of you is good. This is stuff that the mind does. Right? The mind evaluates and judges oneself. It says, this part of me is bad, right? It might not say it in that very direct way, but it relates to situations and parts of you as if they are bad, and it represses them. And it says, these other ones are good. So true self-esteem embraces the full spectrum of one's self. It embraces the spectrum of, let's say, the insecure parts to the secure parts. It embraces the parts that feel safe and the parts that feel unsafe. True self-esteem doesn't discriminate between all these various parts. It's able to hold them in a safe container, which is your own consciousness, and allow your full self to arise as it naturally and organically does as you exist and experience life. And false self-esteem is about judging and denying the parts that we unconsciously or consciously perceive of as bad, and then trying to just identify with the parts that we perceive as good because they're going to give us validation and achievement and all that kind of stuff. So false self-esteem imitates true self-esteem. No matter how good it actually feels in the moment, it simply doesn't actually esteem the self. And it's basically impossible for false self-esteem to esteem the self. How can it actually esteem the self when it's completely ignoring the self? It's stuck in external achievement and money and validation and status and sex and all this stuff. Getting more, doing more, being better. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having more or being better or improvement whatsoever. It's just that this cannot heal the inner psychological, emotional, spiritual phenomena and factors that are required to actually develop true self-esteem. So the false self-esteem paradigm only esteems achievement, having more, and doing more, and being better. And if it wasn't for achievement, the whole self part would be thrown away. Because it's a distraction from ourself. It's a distraction from the internal phenomena. Right? It's a distraction from the underlying psychological and emotional insecurity. True self-esteem simply is who one is. It's who you're being, whereas false self-esteem is based off of what one does or what one has. We're all very familiar with having and doing. Doing something great to achieve something great. Or having more money. Having a beautiful girlfriend. Having a handsome, charming, funny, intelligent provider husband. Having and doing. We're very familiar with this. I'm not going to explain this anymore. Being, or just, I'll just leave it at being, who you're being, right? This is a bit harder to explain. Not in the sense that it's super complicated, but in the sense that we're less familiar with it, and we have so much conditioning that pulls us away from being. Being is just existing. That's it. Being is just simply existence right now as it is, fully embracing and accepting it. And through this increasing acceptance for experience as it is, you increase your ability to feel safe, secure, present, and grounded inside of it and within yourself, leading to more and more self-esteem. Right? So being is the identity level. True self-esteem has to do with accepting things as they actually are right now, without needing to manipulate or rearrange them. And of course, this doesn't mean that you can't rearrange the external world ever again. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you can't expect that to solve the internal problem. That's really the only thing I'm pointing out here. Right? You can still go get jacked and lift weights, and it's going to feel pretty damn good. Right? It feels very nice to have big muscles, or, right, I weightlift a lot. I've been doing it for a very long time. It's just that this is incapable of really healing the underlying psychological, emotional factors. So I want to really list off some core points that you need to develop in order to really develop very high self-esteem. So self-esteem requires self-regulation, requires this ability to connect to the emotional experience happening right now, the flow of sensation, the flow of energy, the flow of feeling. To connect to yourself in a felt way, where you're actually fully feeling yourself. And we're usually escaping this by going on to screens and junk food and a bunch of distractions. We are afraid of this sense of flow and connection to life because it actually starts to deconstruct the ego. We're always grasping onto security and a sense of who we are and all this kind of stuff. So it also requires a regulation of the nervous system to get you out of fight, flight, freeze. so that your nervous system is simply regulated and you can actually just be present, stable, and grounded in the moment without being in subtle states of fight, flight, freeze. Next is just presence, being present within oneself, being present within the moment. There's no self-esteem without being present in the moment, because when you're not present in the moment, you're avoiding it, you're trying to escape it, run away from it, etc. And self-esteem is being safe, grounded, and stable within the moment, being present in the moment and within yourself. So no presence, no self-esteem. Awareness of oneself is basically ties in to presence. Another core point is just connection to oneself. Meditation is really good for basically all of these points, although there's a lot of stuff you can do. Another core point is that self-esteem requires impulse control and mastery over impulses. It requires emotional mastery, not in a way that suppresses emotion, but in a way that allows sensations to all arise and pass. See, allowing an emotion, a thought, a sensation, an impulse, a desire to arise freely inside of you, and then allowing it to pass is the most loving way you can relate to yourself, because you don't have this need to struggle or fight against yourself. You can allow every part of you to arise into existence and then pass away. It's really the most loving way of relating to oneself. You don't have to push parts down and struggle against other parts. It's this full spectrum embrace. Regardless of the part of you, it's welcomed into the light of your own consciousness. And there's a lot of things you can really do to help you in this journey. Like exercise, right? Making your body feel like a vital and alive place. Right? So I kind of... It's not that doing the thing is going to make you feel good about you, who you are, and it's going to fix the internal problem. It's that doing certain things is simply going to help you to investigate your own psychology so that you can actually heal properly. Like, for example, eating healthy foods. Right? This is going to help you to feel clear and sharp rather than numb and dull if you eat a lot of junk food. Right? Because if you feel numb and dull all the time and your body can't produce states of well-being, you can inquire into yourself and process and be present. It's going to be a lot harder. Right? If your body is, you don't exercise enough, it's not a vital place to be, it's going to be harder. Right? If you don't stretch, if you're not flexible, if you don't do yoga, if you don't read, for example, it's going to be harder. If you're always scrolling on your phone, it's going to be harder to do all this stuff. So you want to set up your life in a way so that your well-being is valued, so that you can have some really good energy that you can invest into really building your self-esteem in the way that I'm describing in this video. So I really want to give you a little bit of this relatively nuanced point. So beneath a lot of the surface of our experience lies our more genuine and deeper impulses and instincts. And a lot of that stuff is always being covered up due to fear, repressed emotions, dysregulations in our nervous system. And it's the uncovering of all this stuff that's actually needed in order to really feel good about who we are. So below your current conditioning and awareness are truer expressions of who you are that are more aligned with the core of your being. They're more aligned with an authentic expression of who you are. And the more unconscious these truer expressions and impulses are, the lower your self-esteem is. And the more confused you'll be about what life path aligns with you and how to actually raise your self-esteem. And having true self-esteem means bringing these truer impulses to your conscious awareness rather than unconsciously repressing them. Because growing up, we're usually repressing the parts of us that didn't get us the acceptance and approval that we needed. We repress the emotions that don't get us the love that we needed. And then we slowly just conform to the environment that we found ourselves in, the culture and the family, etc. Conform to the standards that were set. In order to really raise your self-esteem, you have to go back through a lot of that conditioning. You have to actually have this honest look into your own psyche and really allow the core aspects of your psyche to flourish and come out, which is quite difficult because if our nervous system, for example, is always in fight, flight, freeze, we don't feel safe enough to allow that to happen. Right? Self-esteem, having high self-esteem really requires being one's authentic self, being an honest and truthful expression of yourself. And the thing about false self-esteem is that it doesn't even account for any of this complex psychological stuff. It's just too obsessed with having big muscles. Right? And there's nothing wrong with muscles, of course. I weightlift. It's just that having muscles, for example, wouldn't heal my psyche. It's not going to raise my consciousness. It's not going to do the higher psychological development that's needed to truly feel good about oneself. But it's awesome. I love weightlifting. It makes me feel good. It gives me energy, etc. But there's just more that has to be inquired into, essentially. There's just blind spots within that paradigm. It's okay to have more, do more, or improve, or any of this stuff. It's all fine. It's really all fine. There's just certain blind spots within being stuck in that way of existing, way of being. It's not going to lead to the highest self-esteem that you can possibly develop for yourself. Right? It's not going to lead to mastery over oneself, which is actually needed for true self-esteem. It's not going to lead to a deep connection to oneself, which is needed for true self-esteem. It's always ignoring the self. It's ignoring parts of the psyche. It's denying oneself. So that's it for this video. If you guys want to work with me, you can apply to do so. Link is in the description. Take it easy.